Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am creating a fun watercolor project with a little sparkle watercolor. It is super fun, super easy, and super sparkly, so you know that it's a favorite technique of mine. I'm going to be using the Pinkfresh liquid watercolors today. This is a part of a video blog hop here on YouTube. There are prizes to be had, so be sure you check the description below this video on YouTube for all that information. I'm going to be using the Pinkfresh Fleur 1 stamp and coordinating die sets, and as I mentioned before, the Pinkfresh liquid watercolors. So I'm just making sure that I have them all shook up and ready to go. You want to get those pigments moving if they've been sitting on your shelf. So I just give them a quick shake, and now I'm ready to start stamping. I have this large floral image mounted on my acrylic block, and I'm inking it up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne black pigment ink, and I'm stamping this onto some Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock. I'm stamping it a couple of times because I know that I tend to screw things up. So I always like to have an extra on hand, and if for some reason I don't mess up, then I have another one for a future project. Now I'm also prepping the surface of this vellum with a powder tool, and I'm stamping in that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink onto this vellum. And I am going to add some clear embossing powder to all of these images and then heat set it, the vellum as well as those two images on the watercolor cardstock. Now on the watercolor cardstock, embossing these lines is going to help me keep the color inside of the lines. It creates like a little well for the liquid, for the water to kind of sit in, and kind of helps you color in the lines a little bit better. So it's always great to kind of heat emboss your images when you're watercoloring. I think it's super helpful. Now I'm going to be using a water brush for this, and you saw there I just used a little medication dropper to fill that up. I don't have a sink in my craft room. That's like a pipe dream for me. So I just get a jar of water, and then I can fill up that water brush with that little medication dropper. And now I'm bringing in my Tonic Easy Clean craft mat, and I'm just dropping some of these liquid watercolors, just one drop of each of these colors onto this mat. Now you could also use a palette for this or even an acrylic block, but I'm using the Easy Clean mat today. And here's where the sparkle comes in. I am using the Sukunyeko Shimmer Sparkle Spritz, and I am sucking some up in that same medication dropper, and I'm just dropping it by these drops of liquid watercolor. I touched the tip of this medication dropper to that first color, that bubble gum there on the top. That was not a good idea because it picked up a little bit of that pink color, but I just kind of cleared it off on a paper towel. And you can see I added that Sparkle Shimmer Spritz to each one of those colors. And this is going to give the watercolor its shimmer. Now I use this Shimmer Spritz for all kinds of things. I spray it over stamped images. I spray it all over cards. I watercolor with it. It's a great product to have on hand. But if you don't have this, you could use like an Aqua shimmer pen from Tonic or a Wink of Stella pen, or you could mix up some Perfect Pearls and some water and mix that with your watercolor, and that will give it kind of a pearlescent shine as well. Now you don't have to use this with a liquid watercolor. You can do the same technique with whatever watercolors that you have. However, I would recommend if you have like a set of pan watercolors that you bring the color over to a palette to mix in the shimmer spritz, because if you do it right in the pan, you're going to have shimmer in that pan forever. And if you want shimmer watercolor forever, then go ahead and mix it in the pan. But if you don't, if you want to be able to just use your watercolors as they are intended, then do not mix your shimmer spritz in your pan watercolors. So you could just bring a little bit of that color over to a palette, over to a craft sheet, mix in your shimmer spritz there, and you can use any type of watercolors that you have. I'm using the Pinkfresh watercolors today. They are a pigment-based watercolor. They are super vibrant and rich in color. They're easy to use, and I love the different colors that Pinkfresh offers. So I just find that these are really easy to use with this technique. Now I'm going to continue to watercolor this image here. I am using the Pinkfresh Bubblegum, Sunshine, key lime, emerald, and then on the bottom, that mix of 3 different greens down there is the emerald, the key lime, and the aquamarine. And then up over by the bubblegum on the right-hand side, that's aquamarine as well. It's kind of a nice teal color. Now, when I move to all of this greenery around these flowers, I'm going to use different variations of green to keep it from all looking the same. So I used some emerald, I used some key lime, I used a little bit of that custom mix color that just kept it from being too much of the same thing. And once I had all of that watercolored, I took some of the Pinkfresh Sky watercolor and I sprayed in some of that Shimmer Spritz. So that's another option. You could spray the Shimmer Spritz onto the watercolors instead of dropping it on with the dropper. And I am just kind of painting around this using that sky color to kind of fill in the background. Now with some of this left over, I did end up making like some watercolor backgrounds. So I just wet the paper or wet the surface of my watercolor cardstock and dropped in some color here. These are going to end up with that same beautiful sparkle as my floral images. These are just going to be watercolor backgrounds. Now I didn't actually use these in my project today, but I did want to show you that that was an option. And remember, I only used a single drop of each of those colors, and I was able to color so many images. I could have kept going, but I didn't have time. So now I am using the coordinating dies. I'm holding those in place with the Frog Delicate Surface Painter's Tape, and I'm running it through my Gemini Junior to die cut these images. So I have the watercolor images and the one that I heat embossed on vellum. And now I am taking some of the pattern paper from the Simple and Sweet pattern paper pad from Pinkfresh Studio, and I'm cutting it to 3 1/4 by 4. Then I'm going to take this square die and I am going to position it right at the top of this piece of pattern paper. And I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. I am making my own kind of instant photo frame to go on the front of my card using these pattern papers. I actually created 2. I created one with this black and white paper as well. And I decided not to use that, but I can save it for another project in the future. So now I am going to take this piece that I heat embossed on vellum and I'm going to snip it in half here. And I have some foam adhesive on the back of this watercolored piece. And I'm going to just offset this vellum piece right behind it just to give it a little bit of fullness and depth in all of these images. I just thought that black and white looked really cool with all the colorful watercolor as well. Then I'm going to take foam adhesive and adhere this to that frame that I created right down in the lower left-hand corner. And that just gives me a really cool focal point for the front of my card. Now for my sentiment, I am using the floral frame stamp set from Pinkfresh Studio. I'm using the Sending Love and Hug stamp. I am heat embossing that using some VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink and some clear embossing powder onto some vellum. And then I'll use some Delicate Surface Painter's Tape to hold the coordinating die in place and run that through my die cut machine. I think it's really cool when sentiments have coordinating dies. It's just a fun way to kind of use them. Now I added just a touch of liquid glue on the back of that sentiment. I placed it onto a piece of white cardstock that I cut into a banner shape, and then I adhered that on the bottom of my frame. And then I'm using foam adhesive to adhere this entire grouping onto an A2 size card front. So it's cut to 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. Now I finished off this card with some sparkling clear sequins and a little bit of champagne colored metallic washi tape. And I just put that below the sentiment and at the top of the frame. And here is a look at that shimmer or sparkle effect that you get when you combine that Shimmer Spritz with these liquid watercolors. It is so hard to capture it on video or even on still camera, but in real life, it is super sparkly and just so beautiful. Now, if you wanted to, you could watercolor your image and then spritz the entire thing with that Shimmer Spritz. But if you're working with a watercolor that's not permanent once it's dry, like something like Distress that reactivates with water or moisture, then that would move your color around. So you want to be careful if you choose to go that route instead. And I think that you get a much more like intense sparkle when you mix the sparkle or Shimmer Spritz in with your watercolor prior to watercoloring, because you get just more saturation of that sparkle in there rather than lightly misting your project. So that completes my card project today featuring the sparkle watercolor effect and the Pinkfresh Studio liquid watercolors. As I mentioned before, this video is a part of a video hop here on YouTube, and there are prizes to be had, so be sure you check the description box below for all the information on that. As always, I will have links to the featured supplies used in this project in the description at YouTube, but head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Over there, I'll have more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies for you. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.